The wind howls through the empty streets of a small Texas town as David Marshall closes the curtains in his modest living room. Rain hammers against the windows like an army of tiny fists demanding entry. The weatherman on the old television warns of the worst storm in a decade. Power outages expected. Possible flooding. Stay indoors at all costs. David glances at the clock, almost 9 p.m., and knows it's time to tuck his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, into bed. He carries a steaming mug of hot cocoa carefully through the hallway, the rich chocolate aroma fighting against the mustiness of a house that's seen better days. The ceiling leaks in two places, with strategically placed buckets catching the rhythmic drips. Sometimes the things that look broken just need someone patient enough to fix them, he whispers to himself, a mantra repeated often since losing his wife 3 years ago. In Lily's room, stuffed animals guard a small desk cluttered with drawings and a half-completed science project. David smiles at the contraption, a makeshift water filter she's building for her class. Even at 7, she shows the same analytical mind that made him a promising software engineer before he stepped back to be a more present father. Lily sits cross-legged on her bed, already in her favorite constellation-patterned pajamas, clutching her worn rabbit plushie. Her dark curls frame a face that's so much like her mother's, it sometimes catches David off guard. She looks up as he enters, her eyes wide with concern. "Is the storm going to blow our house away, Daddy?" David sets the cocoa on her nightstand and kneels beside her bed. "No, sweetheart. Our house might be small, but it's strong, like us." Another crack of thunder makes Lily flinch. David gently brushes a strand of hair from her forehead. "Tell me about today's meeting," she says, clearly trying to distract herself. "Did your boss like your idea?" David's smile falters slightly. Just hours ago, he had stood in the sleek conference room at Innovex Technologies, pitching his software solution to streamline their production processes. It had taken months of late nights to perfect. "Well," he says, "Ms. Carter thought it needed more work." The memory flashes vivid in his mind. Emily Carter, the newly appointed CEO, dismantling his presentation point by point in front of the entire team. Her voice cool and precise as a surgeon's scalpel, her steel blue eyes never betraying a hint of emotion. The other employees had glanced away in second-hand embarrassment as she questioned why she should invest company resources in an untested approach from a mid-level engineer. "Your algorithm seems inefficient," she had stated, flipping through his handout with manicured fingers. "And these projected savings are optimistic at best, delusional at worst." The boardroom had fallen silent. No one challenged Emily Carter, especially not since her meteoric rise from director of operations to CEO in just 5 years. Her reputation for ruthless efficiency had earned her the nickname Ice Queen among the staff, though never within her hearing. "I believe the numbers are sound," David had ventured, his voice steady despite his racing heart. The initial investment would pay for itself within 8 months. Emily had looked up, her gaze cold enough to freeze flame. "Mr. Marshall, is it? When I want business advice from a mid-level engineer with no financial background, I'll be sure to ask. Until then, perhaps focus on your assigned projects rather than redesigning company workflow." The dismissal had been absolute. David had gathered his materials and returned to his cubicle, the whispers of his colleagues following him down the corridor. Lily's small hand on his snaps David back to the present. "She's wrong," Lily states with absolute conviction. "You're the smartest daddy in the world." David chuckles. There might be some bias in that assessment. The house shudders as another blast of wind hits. The lights flicker ominously. "How about a story before the power decides to take a break?" David asks, pulling Lily's quilt up to her chin. "The one about the knight and the Ice Queen," Lily requests, settling back against her pillow. "Again? That's 3 nights in a row." "It's my favorite." David smiles and begins the familiar tale. "Once upon a time, there was a brave knight who lived in a small cottage with his daughter, the cleverest princess in all the land. Not far from their village stood a magnificent castle made of ice, where the Snow Queen ruled." As he weaves the story, one he created after Lily asked why some people at his company seemed so cold, David notices Lily's eyelids growing heavy. Just as the fictional knight is about to prove his worth to the queen, Lily drifts off to sleep. David carefully removes the half-empty cocoa mug and places a gentle kiss on her forehead. Sweet dreams, my clever princess. He's halfway down the hallway when a sound cuts through the storm's fury. 3 sharp knocks on the front door. David freezes. Visitors are rare in this weather, especially at this hour. For a moment, he wonders if it's a neighbor in trouble or perhaps a tree branch blown against the door. Then the knocks come again, more urgent this time, almost desperate. The storm's howl intensifies as David approaches the door. He peers through the peephole but can only make out a dark, hunched silhouette. Against his better judgment, he unbolts the lock and opens the door a crack, keeping the security chain fastened. The wind nearly tears the door from his hand. Standing on his porch is a woman drenched from head to toe, her expensive-looking coat plastered to her body. She holds the hand of a small boy who appears around Lily's age, equally soaked and visibly shivering. "I'm sorry to disturb you," the woman begins, her voice trembling slightly from the cold. "Our car broke down about half a mile back. My phone's dead, and yours is the only house with lights on. Could we use your phone to call for help?" Lightning illuminates the night sky, briefly casting the woman's face in harsh white light. David's breath catches in his throat. Even with her hair plastered to her forehead and makeup running down her cheeks, he recognizes her immediately. Emily Carter, the CEO who had dismantled his career aspirations just hours ago. She doesn't seem to recognize him in the dim porch light. Her focus is entirely on the shivering boy beside her, her arm wrapped protectively around his shoulders. For a split second, David considers the bitter irony. He could close the door, tell her to find another house. Let her experience a fraction of the humiliation he felt today. Instead, he glances at the boy's frightened face and makes his decision. "Come in quickly," he says, unlatching the chain and stepping back. "You're both soaked to the bone." Relief washes over Emily's face as she hurries the boy inside. "Thank you. I can't tell you how grateful." Her words cut off abruptly as she steps into the light of the living room. Her eyes widen in recognition. "Mr. Marshall?" David nods, closing the door against the storm. "Miss Carter." The silence that follows is deafening, despite the raging tempest outside. Emily stands rigidly in his entryway, water pooling at her feet, her professional composure momentarily shattered by surprise. The boy presses closer to her side, sensing the sudden tension. "I didn't realize this was your home," she says finally, her CEO voice attempting to reassert itself despite her bedraggled appearance. "Small world," David responds simply. "Let me get you both some towels." As he retrieves the towels from the hallway closet, his mind races. Of all the houses in all the neighborhoods in this town, Emily Carter had to knock on his door. The universe, it seems, has a perverse sense of humor. When he returns, Emily is whispering reassurances to the boy, who hasn't stopped shivering. David hands them each a towel, noticing how Emily's hands, usually so steady when delivering corporate verdicts, tremble slightly as she takes it. "Thank you," she says, the words sounding foreign on her lips. Perhaps thank you isn't a phrase the Ice Queen of Innovex uses often. "You mentioned your car broke down?" David asks, focusing on practicalities. Emily nods while drying the boy's hair gently. "Yes, about half a mile back, just after the bridge. The engine just died. I tried calling roadside assistance, but there's no signal, and then my phone battery died." "The storm's knocked out most of the cell towers," David explains. "And I doubt any tow trucks are running in this weather. They've closed most of the roads." Fear flickers across Emily's face, an expression David has never seen on her before. "So we're stuck here? For how long?" Before David can answer, a tremendous crack of thunder shakes the house, and the lights flicker once, twice, then die completely. The boy lets out a frightened whimper in the sudden darkness. "Perfect timing," David mutters, reaching for his phone to activate the flashlight. The beam cuts through the blackness, illuminating Emily's face and the boy clinging to her side. "Power outages were expected. I have candles and a generator, but it only powers the essentials." "Jacob's afraid of the dark," Emily says quietly, running a soothing hand through the boy's hair. David directs the light downward to avoid blinding them. "My daughter was too. I might have something that could help." He turns toward the hallway. "Follow me to the kitchen. We'll get you both warmed up." As they move through the darkened house, David's phone light casting long shadows on the walls, he can't help but notice how different Emily looks outside the corporate environment. Without her power suit and the boardroom backdrop, soaking wet in his modest home. She seems almost human. In the kitchen, David lights several candles, bathing the room in a warm, flickering glow. He sets a kettle on the gas stove, thankfully not dependent on electricity. "I'm making tea to warm you up," he explains, then gestures to the small bathroom off the kitchen. "There are some dry clothes in there you can change into. They're my wife's, so they might be a bit big, but they're clean and dry." Emily hesitates, glancing down at her expensive but soaked designer outfit, then at the humble surroundings. "Your wife won't mind?" A shadow crosses David's face. "She passed away 3 years ago. Cancer." "I'm sorry," Emily says, and for once her voice carries genuine emotion. "I didn't know." "It's not in my HR file," David replies with a small shrug. "For Jacob, I might have some of Lily's clothes that could fit him. She's about his age." "Who's Lily?" Jacob asks, speaking for the first time, his voice small but curious. "My daughter," David answers with a smile. "She's sleeping now, but I'm sure she'd be happy to lend you something drawn." As David rummages through a drawer for candles, Emily studies the kitchen. Family photos line the refrigerator. David with a little girl with dark curls, both smiling widely. Science fair ribbons, crayon drawings, a calendar dense with notations of school events and doctor appointments. It's the home of a devoted father, nothing like the sleek, minimalist apartment she returns to each night. "You have a lovely home," she offers, the platitude sounding hollow even to her ears. David glances up, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "It's not exactly the corner office at Innovex, but it keeps the rain out, most of the time." He hands Emily a candle. "Let me find something for Jacob to wear, and then we'll see about that tea." As David disappears into the darkened hallway, Emily kneels beside her son. "Are you okay, honey?" she whispers, brushing wet hair from his forehead. Jacob nods, but his eyes dart nervously around the unfamiliar kitchen. "How long do we have to stay here?" he asks. "Just until the storm passes," Emily assures him, though she's not entirely convinced herself. "Mr. Marshall seems nice, doesn't he?" Jacob considers this, then nods slowly. "He talks to me like Dad used to, before he left." The simple observation strikes Emily with unexpected force. It's true, David had addressed Jacob directly, not talking over or around him as most adults did. It's a small detail, but one that resonates with unexpected weight. David returns with a small stack of children's clothes and a battery-powered lantern. "These should fit," he says, handing the clothes to Jacob. "And this is for you." He places the lantern in the boy's hands. Jacob examines the device curiously. "It's a special kind of light," David explains, kneeling to Jacob's level. "When you're scared of the dark, it helps to have something you control. See this button? You press it whenever you need light, and it comes right away." Jacob presses the button, and the lantern glows warmly. A small smile appears on his face. "My daughter used to be afraid too," David continues, "but I told her something that helped." "Want to know what it is?" Jacob nods eagerly. "The dark is just the light taking a short break, and brave kids like you can always bring it back with the push of a button." Emily watches this interaction with growing amazement. In less than 5 minutes, David Marshall, the mid-level engineer whose proposal she had dismissed without a second thought that morning, had connected with her son more effectively than most people in Jacob's life. The kettle whistles, startling everyone. David stands and moves to prepare the tea. "You two should change into dry clothes. The bathroom is right through there," he says, nodding toward a door. "I'll have hot drinks ready when you're done." 20 minutes later, the scene in the kitchen has transformed. Jacob sits at the table in borrowed pajamas featuring cartoon dinosaurs, both hands wrapped around a mug of hot chocolate, the magic lantern glowing beside him. Emily, in an oversized sweater and yoga pants, sips tea, her wet hair gathered in a loose ponytail. Her usual perfectly applied makeup is gone, revealing a naturally beautiful face rarely seen by her employees. David sets a plate of cookies on the table. Not exactly a five-star accommodation, but it's the best I can do on short notice. "It's perfect," Jacob says immediately, reaching for a cookie. "Mom never lets me have cookies this late." Emily raises an eyebrow but doesn't contradict him. Instead, she asks, "Do you think the roads will be clear by morning?" David shakes his head. "Unlikely. The weather service is predicting the storm will intensify overnight and continue through tomorrow. The town's emergency protocols usually mean no road clearing until the worst is past. I have an important meeting tomorrow, Emily says, more to herself than to David. The board members are flying in from New York. I'm afraid they won't be flying anywhere in this weather, David replies. All flights are grounded. Emily looks like she's about to argue but stops herself. This isn't her office where her word is law. This is David Marshall's home, and she is, for all intents and purposes, stranded and at his mercy. I suppose I should call and reschedule, she says, reaching for her phone before remembering it's dead. You can use mine, David offers, sliding his phone across the table. But reception is spotty at best. As Emily attempts to make her calls, David turns to Jacob. So what grade are you in, Jacob? Second, the boy answers, his previous shyness starting to fade. I'm 7. Really? Lily's in second grade too. Maybe you go to the same school? Jacob shakes his head. I go to Westfield Academy. Ah, David nods, understanding. Westfield is the most exclusive private school in the area, with tuition that costs more than his monthly mortgage payment. Lily goes to Oak Ridge Elementary. Is she nice? Jacob asks, genuine curiosity in his voice. I think so, David smiles. But I'm biased. She loves science and building things. She's working on a water filter project right now. Jacob's eyes light up. I like science too. Mom got me a chemistry set for Christmas. But, his voice drops, she doesn't have time to do experiments with me. David notices Emily stiffens slightly at this, but pretends not to see. Well, maybe tomorrow you can see Lily's project. I bet she'd love to show it to you. Emily returns to the table, frustration evident on her face. No signal, she says, pushing the phone back to David. I can't reach anyone. The storm, David explains simply. It happens. Emily runs a hand through her damp hair, a gesture of uncharacteristic uncertainty. I should have listened to the weather reports before deciding to drive back tonight. Were you visiting someone? David asks. My sister, Emily replies. She lives about an hour from here. We don't see each other often enough. So when I had a rare free weekend, she trails off as if suddenly realizing she's sharing personal information with an employee. Jacob yawns widely, drawing both adults' attention. Someone's tired, David observes gently. Emily checks her watch, an elegant timepiece that looks out of place with her borrowed clothes. It's well past his bedtime. I've made up the guest room for you both, David says, standing. It's not fancy, but the bed is comfortable, and I've put extra blankets out in case it gets colder. You don't have to do that, Emily protests weakly. Would you prefer the couch? David asks with a raised eyebrow. For a moment, Emily seems taken aback by his directness, so different from the deferential treatment she receives at work. Then, unexpectedly, a small smile curves her lips. No, the guest room sounds perfect, thank you. David leads them down the hallway, past framed photos of Lily's artwork and family memories. The guest room is simple but clean. A double bed with a patchwork quilt, a small dresser, and a rocking chair by the window. He places additional candles on the dresser and lights them. The bathroom is across the hall. Towels are in the cabinet. If you need anything else, I'm just down at the end of the hallway. Emily stands awkwardly in the center of the room, clutching her damp designer clothes. In the candlelight, with her corporate armor stripped away, she looks younger, almost vulnerable. Mr. Marshall. David, please, he interrupts gently. We're not at the office now. She hesitates, then nods. David, I want to thank you for taking us in, especially after today's meeting. David leans against the door frame, studying her. Would you have done the same? He asks, genuine curiosity in his voice. The question catches Emily off guard. Would she have opened her door to an employee she had publicly criticized just hours earlier? Before she can formulate an answer, Jacob calls from the bed where he's already burrowed under the covers. Mom, can Mr. David tell me a bedtime story, like he does for Lily? Emily looks surprised, then uncertain. She glances at David, who shrugs slightly. I don't mind, he says quietly, if it's okay with you. After a moment's hesitation, Emily nods. That would be nice, thank you. David approaches the bed and sits on its edge. What kind of stories do you like, Jacob? Adventures, the boy answers promptly, with brave heroes. David pretends to consider deeply. I know just the one. As he begins a tale about a young explorer discovering a hidden world beneath his backyard, Emily moves to the rocking chair by the window. The storm continues to rage outside, but in this small room, illuminated by gentle candlelight, there's a peculiar sense of peace. She watches as her son's eyes grow heavy, his small face relaxed in a way she rarely sees anymore. David's voice is soothing, his storytelling animated without being overwhelming. He creates distinct voices for different characters, drawing Jacob deeper into the narrative. Emily finds herself listening just as attentively as her son, caught up in the simple magic of a well-told story. When Jacob finally drifts off to sleep, David quietly finishes the tale and stands. "You're good at that," Emily whispers, genuine admiration in her voice. "Lots of practice," David responds with a modest smile. "Good night, Miss Carter." "Emily," she corrects him softly, "we're not at the office now." Something passes between them, a small acknowledgement that the normal boundaries have been temporarily suspended by circumstance. David nods once and slips out of the room, leaving Emily alone with her sleeping son and thoughts that are suddenly, unexpectedly complicated. In his own bedroom, David sits on the edge of his bed, the events of the day playing through his mind like a bizarre film. This morning, Emily Carter had been the untouchable CEO, the ice queen who had dismissed months of his work in minutes. Tonight, she's sleeping in his guest room, wearing his late wife's clothes, her carefully constructed corporate persona washed away by the storm. He glances at the photo on his nightstand, himself and Maria before her illness, both smiling on a hiking trip. "You wouldn't believe the day I've had," he whispers to the image. With a sigh, he blows out his candle and lies back, listening to the storm's continued assault on the world outside. In the darkness, one thought circles in his mind. Sometimes the things that look broken just need someone patient enough to fix them. The next morning arrives with dim gray light filtering through rain-streaked windows. The storm has weakened slightly, but still drums steadily on the roof. David wakes early, checking the house for damage, and finding, thankfully, only minor leaks. The power remains out, the generator humming steadily to keep the refrigerator and essential circuits running. In the kitchen, he works by daylight and battery-powered lanterns, assembling a simple breakfast. The familiar routine grounds him after the surreal events of the night before. He's mixing pancake batter when a small voice startles him. "Good morning." Lily stands in the doorway, her curly hair a wild tangle, clutching her stuffed rabbit. She eyes the pancake preparations with approval. "Morning, sweetheart," David smiles. "Sleep okay through the storm?" Lily nods, then lowers her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Daddy, there's a boy sleeping in the guest room with the lady. Did they get lost in the storm?" David can't help but chuckle at his daughter's matter-of-fact observation. "Sort of. Their car broke down nearby and they needed shelter. The boy's name is Jacob, and he's about your age. His mom is—" He hesitates, unsure how to explain. "Is she your friend?" Lily asked innocently. "She's someone I work with," David answers carefully. Lily's eyes widen. "Is she the ice queen from your stories?" David winces. Perhaps those bedtime stories had been a mistake. "Lily, that's not a nice thing to call people. Her name is Messa Carter, and she's my boss. She and Jacob will be staying with us until the storm passes." Lily absorbs this information with a thoughtful expression. "Does she have ice powers like in the story?" "No, honey, that's just make-believe." David hands her a small bowl. "Want to help stir the blueberries into the batter?" Lily eagerly takes over the task, standing on a step stool to reach the counter. As they work together preparing breakfast, David explains the situation in simple terms. Lily listens attentively, asking occasional questions, but mostly accepting the unexpected guests with the resilience of childhood. They're flipping the first batch of pancakes when Emily appears in the doorway. She's still in the borrowed clothes, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Without makeup and the shield of designer clothes, she looks younger, softer somehow, though the alert intelligence in her eyes remains unchanged. "Good morning," she says hesitantly, clearly uncomfortable being seen in such an informal state. "Morning," David replies, flipping a pancake with practiced ease. "Coffee's ready if you'd like some. No electricity, but the stove is gas so we can still have hot food." "Coffee would be wonderful," Emily admits, moving cautiously into the kitchen as if entering unfamiliar territory. Lily studies the newcomer with undisguised curiosity. "Are you Daddy's boss?" she asks directly. Emily looks startled at the question, glancing at David, who continues cooking with a small, amused smile. "Yes, I suppose I am," she answers finally. Lily nods thoughtfully. "Daddy says you're very smart, but sometimes you forget to listen." "Lily," David warns gently, but there's no real admonishment in his tone. Emily's eyebrows rise, but instead of the cool dismissal David half expects, a surprising laugh escapes her, a genuine sound he's never heard at the office. "That's probably fair," she admits, accepting the mug of coffee David offers. "And you must be Lily. Your father talks about you a lot." "Really?" Lily seems pleased by this. "What does he say?" "That you're very clever," Emily responds, taking a sip of coffee, "and that you're building a water filter for your science project." Lily beams. "Do you want to see it? It's almost done." Before Emily can answer, Jacob appears in the doorway, hair rumpled from sleep, still in the borrowed dinosaur pajamas. He hovers uncertainly until Lily notices him. "Hi, I'm Lily. Want some pancakes? My dad makes the best ones." Jacob looks to his mother for guidance. Emily nods encouragingly, and he steps fully into the kitchen. "I'm Jacob," he says quietly. "I know," Lily responds cheerfully. "My dad told me. He said your car broke in the storm and you had to stay here. Do you like dinosaurs? Your pajamas have them." Jacob glances down at his borrowed clothes and nods. "I have a whole collection at home." "Cool, I have a microscope. Want to see it after breakfast?" The simple, direct friendship approach of children breaks the ice more effectively than any adult small talk. Within minutes, Lily and Jacob are chatting about school and dinosaurs and favorite foods, the strangeness of the situation forgotten in the way only children can manage. David and Emily exchange a glance over their coffee mugs, a brief, unspoken acknowledgement of the unexpected ease between their children. For a moment, they're not CEO, an employee, but simply parents, sharing the universal experience of watching their children navigate the world. Breakfast unfolds with surprising naturalness. Lily dominates the conversation, drawing Jacob out of his shell with questions and observations. David keeps the pancakes coming, and even Emily relaxes incrementally, the rigid posture of the boardroom softening in the warmth of the family kitchen. As they finish eating, Lily turns to Jacob with excitement. "Want to see my science project now? It's in my room." Jacob looks to his mother, who nods permission. The two children scamper off, leaving the adults alone in a suddenly quiet kitchen. Emily traces the rim of her coffee mug with one finger. "Your daughter is quite something." "She's never met a stranger," David agrees, gathering plates. "Just jumps right into friendship with both feet." "Jacob isn't usually so open," Emily admits. "He's quite shy at school. The teachers say he has trouble connecting with other children." David considers this as he rinses dishes in the sink. Sometimes kids just need the right person to bring them out of their shell. A comfortable silence falls between them, punctuated only by the sounds of the ongoing storm and distant childish laughter from Lily's room. It's a strange domestic tableau, so far removed from their professional relationship that it almost feels like they're different people entirely. Emily moves to help with the dishes, a gesture that clearly surprises David. "You don't have to do that," he says. "I'm not completely helpless," she responds with a hint of defensiveness, then softens. "Though I admit I don't do much housework. My housekeeper comes 3 times a week." David hands her a towel. "No housekeepers here, just me and Lily against the dirty dishes." As they work side by side in the simple task, Emily glances around the modest kitchen. Family photos, children's artwork, a home well-loved but showing signs of financial strain. Small repairs put off, appliances that have seen better days. "How do you do it?" she asks suddenly. "Work full-time and raise her alone?" David considers the question seriously. "One day at a time," he answers finally. "Some days better than others. We have a routine. It's not perfect, but it works for us." "But the late meetings, the overtime, how do you manage?" "I don't," David says simply. "I leave at 5 every day to pick her up from after-school care. The work waits. Lily doesn't. That's why I haven't advanced much in the company," he adds without bitterness. Hard to climb the corporate ladder when you won't stay for the after-hours networking. Emily absorbs this, her expression thoughtful. That's why you developed that workflow automation system? The one you presented yesterday? David nods, surprised she remembered the details. It would reduce overtime for the entire department. More efficiency during regular hours means more time with our families. I thought it was just about cost cutting, Emily admits. That too, David acknowledges, but not everything valuable can be measured on a balance sheet. Before Emily can respond, her attention is caught by something on the refrigerator, a drawing partially hidden beneath a school calendar. She moves closer, studying the childish artwork. It's a crayon drawing of a woman with an exaggerated frown, blue lines shooting from her eyes, surrounded by smaller figures cowering in fear. At the top, in a child's uneven lettering, the Ice Queen. Emily's expression freezes. David follows her gaze and immediately looks mortified. I'm sorry, he says quickly, reaching to remove the drawing. Lily has an active imagination. I should have... No, Emily interrupts, her voice unnaturally controlled. It's accurate enough. She turns away, her posture once again the rigid CEO from the boardroom. The brief moment of connection evaporates like morning mist. David watches her retreat emotionally, mentally kicking himself. Emily, it's just a child's drawing. Lily doesn't even know you. But you do, Emily replies coolly. Clearly you've shared your workplace opinions at home. It's not like that, David protests. I tell Lily stories sometimes, fairy tales based on, well, yes, sometimes inspired by work. But they're just stories. Emily's eyes meet his, challenging. And I'm the villain? The question hangs in the air between them, loaded with more weight than its simple words suggest. Before David can formulate a response that won't make things worse, a crash from the living room interrupts them, followed by Jacob's alarmed cry. Both adults rush to investigate. In the living room, they find Jacob standing wide-eyed next to a fallen picture frame, glass shattered across the hardwood floor. Lily is already kneeling with a small dustpan, carefully collecting shards. I'm sorry, Jacob whispers, his voice trembling. I didn't mean to. I was just looking. Emily immediately moves to her son, her professional mask dropping in an instant. Are you hurt? Did you cut yourself? Jacob shakes his head, tears welling in his eyes. I was just looking at the pictures. David kneels to help Lily with the cleanup. It's okay, buddy. Accidents happen. The fallen frame contains a wedding photo, David and a beautiful woman with Lily's curls, both radiant with happiness. Jacob watches anxiously as David carefully removes the photo from the broken glass. Is that Lily's mom? Jacob asks hesitantly. Yes, David answers, a gentle sadness in his voice. Her name was Maria. Jacob looks at his own mother, then back to David. My dad left when I was 4. Mom says he wasn't ready to be a father. The simple statement hangs in the air. Emily's face flushes with embarrassment, but David just nods understandingly. That must have been hard, he says to Jacob. The boy shrugs with the forced nonchalance children adopt when discussing painful truths. Mom works a lot, but she always reads me a story when she's home in time. Emily's expression is complicated, a mixture of defensiveness and genuine pain. Jacob, why don't you and Lily go back to looking at her science project while we clean up the rest of this? Once the children have left, Emily helps David gather the remaining glass fragments. I'm sorry about the frame, she says quietly. It's just a frame, David assures her. The photo's what matters, and it's fine. Emily examines the wedding picture still in David's hand. She was beautiful. Yes, David agrees simply. She was also brilliant, a pediatric oncologist. Ironic that cancer took her in the end. Emily seems unsure how to respond to this personal revelation. Jacob's father, she begins hesitantly, he really did leave. Said he hadn't signed up for fatherhood, just the perks of a relationship with an ambitious woman. He sends birthday cards sometimes, when he remembers. David places the rescued photo on the shelf. Single parenting isn't for the faint of heart, he says, a simple acknowledgement of their shared experience. You seem to do it better than I do, Emily admits, the words clearly difficult for her. Jacob and I, we don't have many mornings like this, with pancakes and laughter. It's not a competition, David says gently. We're all just doing our best. Emily looks like she might say more when her attention is drawn to something on David's desk in the corner, a familiar folder with the Innovex logo. Her professional instincts reassert themselves. Is that your proposal? The one from yesterday's meeting? David follows her gaze and nods. I was working on revisions last night, before the storm. Before, he gestures vaguely to encompass the bizarre circumstances that brought his CEO to his home. Emily moves toward the desk. May I? David hesitates, then shrugs. Be my guest, though I believe you have already formed your opinion. Emily ignores the hint of bitterness in his tone and opens the folder. Inside are not only the presentation materials from yesterday, but pages of additional notes, alternative implementations, cost projections, and user experience flows, far more comprehensive than what had been presented in the meeting. This is significantly more detailed than what you showed yesterday, she says, leafing through the pages. There's a 10-minute presentation limit for mid-level staff, David explains. This is the full version I've been developing for months. Emily continues examining the documents, her expression growing increasingly thoughtful. This implementation timeline, it's extraordinarily detailed. I was a systems architect before stepping back to a less demanding role, David says quietly. After Maria got sick, then after she died, Lily needed stability more than I needed career advancement. Emily looks up sharply. You were a systems architect? At which firm? Nexus Technologies. I led their banking solutions team for 3 years. Emily's eyebrows rise. Nexus is a major player in the industry. Working there as a team lead would have put David on a fast track to executive positions. Walking away from that kind of trajectory is almost unheard of in their competitive field. You could have mentioned that in your interview at Innovex, she says. David shrugs. The position I applied for didn't require that level of experience. I needed regular hours and flexibility for Lily, not prestige. Before Emily can respond, a tremendous crash of thunder shakes the house, and the lights flicker momentarily as the generator struggles against a power surge. From Lily's room comes a frightened cry, not from Lily but from Jacob. Both parents move immediately toward the sound. They find Jacob huddled in the corner of Lily's room, hands over his ears, eyes squeezed shut. Lily sits beside him, her small hand on his shoulder, speaking softly. It's okay, Jacob. It's just the sky-moving furniture. That's what my dad says. Emily kneels beside her son, concern etched on her face. Jacob, honey, it's all right, just thunder. But Jacob remains curled into himself, trembling. David observes for a moment, then leaves the room briefly, returning with the lantern he had given Jacob the night before. He crouches down to the boy's level. Hey, Jacob, remember this? Your light control? Jacob peeks through his fingers at the lantern. The storm is loud, I know. David continues gently. But you're safe in that, and you have the power to keep the light with you. He places the lantern in Jacob's hands. The boy clutches it tightly, his breathing gradually steadying. When I was your age, David shares, I was scared of storms too. Want to know what helped me? Jacob nods slightly. Building something, using my hands. When you create something, it reminds you that you can make good things even when scary things are happening outside. Emily watches this interaction with a complex expression, part gratitude, part something deeper and more difficult to name. Lily, David turns to his daughter, why don't you show Jacob your special project, the one we've been working on for rainy days? Lily's face lights up. The fort! Yes! Jacob, you'll love it! Within minutes, the children's fear is forgotten as David outlines an ambitious plan to transform the living room. Emily stands uncertainly in the doorway as cushions are pulled from couches, chairs repositioned, and blankets collected. You're welcome to join the construction crew, David says, noticing her hesitation. Or you can continue reviewing the proposal. Your choice. There's a gentle challenge in his voice, a subtle invitation to step outside the comfortable boundaries of her professional identity. For a moment, Emily's instinct is to retreat to the desk, to the familiar territory of spreadsheets and projections. But Jacob's excited face as David explains the load-bearing capabilities of couch cushions makes the decision for her. I've never built a fort before, she admits, stepping into the living room. David raises an eyebrow. Never? Not even as a kid? Emily shakes her head. My parents weren't the fort-building type. They believed in more structured activities. Well then, David hands her a blanket with mock solemnity. You're in for an education, Miss Carter. Soon the adults find themselves recruited into an elaborate construction project. Couch cushions form the foundation, chairs provide structural support, and blankets create walls and a ceiling. David demonstrates proper engineering principles as they work, explaining load-bearing concepts in child-friendly terms. Even Emily, initially hesitant, is drawn into the activity. She proves surprisingly resourceful, suggesting improvements to the design and securing wobbly sections with clever knots. Mom, you never build things at home, Jacob observes with wonder as Emily helps create a blanket tunnel entrance. I guess I've never had the right construction crew, she responds, smiling at her son in a way that transforms her face. When the fort is complete, the four of them crawl inside with flashlights and snacks. Outside, the storm continues its assault, but inside their fabric sanctuary, a different atmosphere prevails. Warm, safe, intimate. Lily shares her collection of minerals, explaining each one with scientific precision beyond her years. Jacob listens with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions that reveal his own intelligence. David and Emily sit back against cushions, watching their children interact with the particular joy of parents seeing their child connect with a peer. She gets her teaching style from her mother, David says quietly. Maria could explain complex medical concepts to the youngest patients without talking down to them. Jacob rarely opens up like this, Emily confides. At school, his teachers say he's often alone at recess. Too quiet, they say. Too serious. Like his mother, David suggests gently. Emily's instinctive defense falters before it forms. Perhaps, she admits, I don't know how to be any other way. The business world isn't kind to women who show vulnerability. True, David acknowledges, but there's a difference between professional strength and emotional walls so high that no one can climb them. Emily studies him, this mid-level engineer who speaks to her with none of the deference or intimidation she's accustomed to receiving. Are you always this direct with your superiors, Mr. Marshall? A small smile plays at the corner of David's mouth. Only when they're sitting in my blanket fort wearing my late wife's yoga pants, Miss Carter. The unexpected quip startles a genuine laugh from Emily, a warm, rich sound that makes both children look up in surprise. Jacob especially seems captivated by this rare sound from his mother. As the day progresses, the strange quartet falls into an unexpected rhythm. David prepares a simple lunch of soup and sandwiches. Emily discovers she can in fact cut vegetables without a personal chef. The children transition from cautious acquaintances to fast friends, with Lily's exuberance drawing out Jacob's quieter nature. In the afternoon, when Jacob mentions his interest in stars, David retrieves a telescope from the hall closet. Though it can't be used in the storm, he shows Jacob how it works, explaining the basics of astronomy with passionate knowledge. Emily watches from the kitchen doorway as her son absorbs every word, his eyes bright with the joy of having an attentive male figure speak to him about his interest. He's good with Jacob, says a small voice beside Emily. She looks down to find Lily observing her with those uncannily perceptive eyes. Yes, Emily agrees softly. He seems to be good with children in general. Lily nods sagely. Daddy says everyone has something special to share if you just take time to listen. She studies Emily with frank curiosity. Are you really the Ice Queen? Emily's breath catches at the direct question. After a moment, she kneels to Lily's level. Some people at work call me that, she admits. Do you think I am? Lily considers this seriously. No, she decides finally. Ice Queens don't help build forts or laugh at Daddy's jokes. I think maybe you're just a regular queen who got too cold and forgot how to be warm. But you're remembering now. With that profound observation, Lily skips off to join the astronomy lesson, leaving Emily momentarily speechless in her wake. The day slips by with unexpected ease, marked by simple activities made novel by the circumstances. Board games by candlelight, stories exchanged, the storm outside contrasting with the growing warmth within. Emily finds herself watching David with increasing fascination. The patience with which he explains things to Jacob, the quiet competence with which he manages the challenges of the power outage. the genuine joy he takes in his daughter's happiness. It's a side of parenting she has rarely experienced, present, engaged, unrushed. Her own approach has always been efficient but compartmentalized. Quality time scheduled between meetings, educational activities arranged through the best services money can buy. Looking at Jacob's face as he helps David prepare dinner, she wonders what her son has been missing. As evening approaches, the storm shows signs of finally weakening. The rain lightens from torrential to merely steady, and the wind decreases from howling to occasional gusts. David's phone suddenly chimes with incoming text. The cell tower's apparently back online. Looks like roads might be clear by morning, he announces, checking the messages. Emergency services are starting cleanup now that the worst has passed. Emily receives the news with visible relief, though perhaps not as enthusiastically as might have been expected 24 hours earlier. That's good, she says, watching Jacob and Lily engaged in an elaborate game they've invented. I have that board meeting to reschedule. The mention of work seems to reset something between them, a reminder of their actual relationship as CEO and employee, so easily forgotten in the domestic bubble of the storm. Right, David nods, his tone cooling slightly. Back to reality. They prepare dinner together in a more subdued atmosphere, the inevitable return to their normal lives hanging between them like an unspoken question. The children, oblivious to the adult undercurrents, continue their newfound friendship with undiminished enthusiasm. After dinner, as David washes dishes, he notices Emily standing at his desk again, re-examining his complete proposal. The sight of her in borrowed casual clothes, studying work documents with intense concentration, creates a strange juxtaposition, as if two separate worlds have temporarily merged. Having second thoughts? He asks, trying to keep his tone neutral. Emily looks up, her expression unreadable. I'm reassessing, she corrects, in light of additional information. The additional information being your background at Nexus, the comprehensive nature of the full proposal, the perspective I've gained. David dries his hands on a kitchen towel. Perspective? Emily gestures vaguely around the modest home. This, your life, the choices you've made. She hesitates, then adds more quietly, the kind of father you are. Before David can respond, the lights suddenly flicker, then come on fully at 3. The power finally restored. Jacob cheers from the living room, and Lily does a little victory dance. Perfect timing, David remarks, though his eyes remain on Emily, trying to decipher the complex emotions playing across her usually guarded face. The evening transitions into bedtime routines. The children brush teeth and change into pajamas. Jacob again requests a story from David, and Emily again watches from the rocking chair as her son is transported by simple words woven into magic. When both children are asleep, Lily in her room, Jacob in the guest room, David and Emily find themselves alone in the living room, the blanket fort still standing as a monument to the day's unexpected adventures. Wine, David offers, retrieving a bottle from a small rack. Not exactly CEO quality, I'm afraid. Wine would be nice, Emily accepts, settling onto the couch. Though I think we firmly established I'm not always the CEO. David pours 2 glasses and sits at the opposite end of the couch, a respectful distance between them. For a moment, they simply sip in silence, the strangeness of their situation hanging in the air. Why didn't you fight for your proposal in the meeting? Emily asked suddenly. You backed down almost immediately when I challenged it. David considers the question. Would it have made a difference? Possibly. I respect conviction. In my experience, David says carefully, trying to change the mind of someone who's already decided rarely works in the moment. Better to regroup and try a different approach later. Is that what you were doing with the revisions I found? Emily asks, preparing for another attempt. David nods. I believe in the project. It would make a real difference for the team. For you, Emily clarifies, so you could spend more time with Lily. For everyone, David corrects gently. Did you know Mark in accounting missed his daughter's dance recital 3 times this year because of month-end closes? Or that Sarah from marketing sleeps at the office during product launches? We talk about work-life balance in company meetings, but the systems don't support it. Emily sips her wine thoughtfully. You see things differently than most of the executives. Because I'm not one of them, David says simply. I'm just trying to do good work and be a good father. Sometimes those goals conflict in our current setup. And you chose being a good father, Emily observes, no judgment in her tone. Every time, David confirms without hesitation. Emily stares into her wine glass, her expression distant. Jacob's father made the opposite choice. Career advancement, freedom, no restraints. He's a VP at Goldman Sachs now. And you? David asked carefully. Which choice did you make? The question hangs between them, weighted with implication. Emily's gaze shifts to the hallway where her son sleeps. I told myself I didn't have to choose, she answers finally. That I could be the perfect mother and the perfect CEO. That Jacob would understand the importance of my work. Her voice drops almost to a whisper. I think I've been lying to myself. It's not too late to find a better balance, David offers. Emily meets his eyes directly. Is that what your proposal is really about? Balance? Isn't that what everyone wants? David counters. To do meaningful work without sacrificing the relationships that give that work purpose? A contemplative silence falls between them, punctuated only by the occasional rumble of distant thunder as the storm moves away. In this quiet moment, they are not CEO and employee, but simply two single parents, navigating the complicated waters of career and family, finding unexpected common ground in a stranger's living room. I should look at your full proposal again, Emily says finally, properly this time. I'd appreciate that, David responds, a cautious hope in his voice. Emily sets down her wine glass and stands, smoothing the borrowed clothes with an unconscious gesture. Thank you, she says formally, for your hospitality, for being kind to Jacob, she struggles momentarily with the words, for showing me another perspective. David rises as well, maintaining the careful distance between them. Thank you for seeing me as more than just another employee with a rejected proposal. They stand facing each other in the soft living room light, the professional and personal boundaries that usually define them temporarily blurred by circumstance. For a brief moment, something unspoken passes between them, a recognition, perhaps, of unexpected connection found in the midst of chaos. Then Emily nods once, professionally, and turns toward the guest room, leaving David alone with his thoughts in the dying sounds of the storm that brought an unlikely visitor to his door. 2 weeks later, life at Innovex Technologies has returned to its usual rhythm. The storm is a memory, the damage repaired, the routine restored. David sits at his cubicle, working through the day's tasks with his customary focus, though his mind occasionally drifts to that strange weekend when his CEO had temporarily inhabited his world. Since their return to work, Emily has been scarce, traveling for meetings, according to office gossip. They've exchanged only the briefest of professional nods in the hallway. Whatever insights or connections had formed during the storm seemed to have washed away with it, leaving David unsure if anything had changed at all. He's reviewing code when his computer pings with a calendar invitation. A meeting with Emily Carter. Today, in 15 minutes. No agenda specified. David stares at the notification, a mixture of curiosity and apprehension rising within him. Had she finally reviewed his proposal? Was this a formal rejection? Or something else entirely? The executive floor feels like a different world, all glass and chrome with sweeping views of the city skyline. David steps off the elevator, straightening his tie nervously. Emily's assistant, a polished young woman with an impenetrable professional demeanor, glances up from her desk. Mr. Marshall, Miss Carter is expecting you. You can go right in. The CEO's office is exactly what one would expect. Spacious, minimalist, impeccably organized. Emily sits behind a substantial desk, reviewing documents on her computer. She looks up as David enters, and for a moment, he's struck by how different she appears from the woman who had laughed in his blanket fort. Back in her designer suit, hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless. Every inch the ice queen of company legend. David, she greets him, gesturing to a chair. Thank you for coming on such short notice. Of course, he responds, taking the offered seat. What can I do for you, Ms. Carter? If she notices his deliberate return to formality, she doesn't show it. Instead, she taps a few keys on her computer, then turns the screen toward him. On it is a presentation titled Project Balance, Workflow Optimization Initiative. Your proposal, she says simply. I've made some modifications. David leans forward, scanning the document quickly. It's his work, but enhanced, expanded, with additional financial projections and implementation strategies. His core ideas remain intact, but the presentation has been elevated to executive quality. I've scheduled you to present this to the board next Thursday, Emily continues, her tone businesslike. They need to hear it directly from its creator. David blinks in surprise. You want me to present to the board? That's unusual for someone at my level. The protocol exists for efficiency, not as an absolute rule, Emily replies. So, in this case, the board should hear from the person who best understands the proposal's intricacies. David studies her carefully, trying to read beneath a professional veneer. May I ask what changed your mind? Emily's expression remains controlled, but something shifts subtly in her eyes. I received new information that caused me to reassess my initial evaluation. New information, David repeats slowly. Yes. Emily straightens a pen on her desk with precise fingers. I've also created a new position that would oversee the implementation of this initiative, should the board approve it. Director of Workflow Systems. It would report directly to me. David's pulse quickens slightly. And who would fill this position? That depends, Emily says, finally meeting his gaze directly. Are you interested? The question hangs between them, laden with implications. It's not just a job offer. It's an acknowledgement, a recognition of his capabilities that goes beyond their strange weekend together. It would mean longer hours, at least initially, Emily continues when he doesn't immediately respond. More responsibility, higher visibility. And after the initial implementation, David asks cautiously. A ghost of a smile touches Emily's lips. The whole point of the system is efficiency, is it not? Once established, it should actually reduce overtime across departments, including for the director. David nods slowly, processing the offer. May I ask one more question? Of course. Is this because of what happened during the storm? Because if it's out of some sense of obligation or gratitude, this is a business decision, Emily interrupts firmly. Based on your qualifications, your vision for this project, and what I believe you can contribute to the company. She pauses, then adds more softly, though I won't deny that seeing you in your element, both professional and personal, provided valuable insight into your capabilities. David absorbs this, turning the opportunity over in his mind. A director position would mean better pay, better benefits for Lily. The project itself would create the very changes he'd been advocating for, and working directly with Emily. I'd need to maintain my schedule, he says finally, leaving by 5 most days to pick up Lily, working from home occasionally when she's sick. He expects resistance, negotiation at the very least. Instead, Emily nods. That's part of the point, isn't it? Creating systems that allow for both productivity and personal obligations. It would set a good example for the rest of the team. David feels a smile spreading across his face. Then yes, I'm interested. Good, Emily responds, her professional mask firmly in place, though her eyes convey something warmer. The board meeting is at 2 p.m. so next Thursday. My assistant will send you the details. Prepare thoroughly. They'll have questions. I will, David promises, standing to leave, recognizing the dismissal in her tone. As he reaches the door, Emily speaks again. One more thing, David. He turns back. Yes? Jacob has been asking about Lily. For the first time in the conversation, Emily's composure slips slightly. He doesn't have many friends, and they seem to connect. David nods, understanding the unspoken question. Lily's been asking about him too. Maybe they could have a play date sometime? This weekend, perhaps? Emily hesitates, then nods. Saturday would work. I could bring him to your house, or... Actually, David interrupts gently. There's a children's science exhibition at the museum. Lily's been wanting to go. Maybe we could all meet there, if you're not too busy. Something complicated passes across Emily's face. Surprise, uncertainty, and perhaps a touch of gratitude. I'll check my calendar, she says, but they both know she'll make it work. I'll text you the details, David says, then adds with a small smile. I still have your number from when you borrowed my phone. Emily nods, already turning back to her computer. Until Thursday, then. Close the door on your way out, please. As David walks back to his cubicle, he can't help but smile at the contrast between the professional exchange and the memory of Emily in borrowed clothes, helping to construct a blanket fort. Two worlds that had briefly collided, creating something unexpected in their intersection. His phone buzzes with a text as he sits down. It's from Emily, which surprises him. He'd expected her to communicate through her assistant. Jacob would love the science exhibition. Saturday at 10? David types back. Perfect. Lily will be thrilled. There's a pause, then another message appears. And David, thank you for showing me another way to see things. Some storms bring unexpected gifts. David stares at the message, a warmth spreading through him that has nothing to do with career advancement. He types back a single line. Sometimes the things that look broken just need someone patient enough to fix them. The board meeting arrives with a swiftness that leaves David barely enough time to prepare. He spends late nights refining the presentation, anticipating questions, strengthening his arguments. By Thursday morning, his proposal is polished to a high shine, but his nerves remain raw. Presenting to the board of directors is a rare opportunity for someone at his level, a chance to be seen and heard by the decision makers who normally exist in a different stratosphere. It's also, he knows, a risk for Emily. By championing his proposal and creating a director position for him, she's invested her own political capital in his success. The boardroom is intimidating, all glass, chrome, and polished mahogany. Emily enters last, commanding attention effortlessly before yielding the floor to David with a professional nod. As he begins his presentation, David notices Parker Thompson, son of the board chairman and notorious as both a ruthless operator and Emily's former suitor, watching with calculating eyes. David explains the workflow system with clarity and conviction, outlining the current problems and his proposed solutions. The board members engage with varying degrees of interest, some raising concerns about implementation costs and timeline that David addresses confidently. And you believe this system will actually reduce hours without sacrificing productivity? Asks Thompson Sr., the board chairman, his tone dubious. I'm confident it will, David responds. The data from similar implementations at other companies shows an average productivity increase of 23% while reducing overtime by 30%. That sounds too good to be true, Parker interjects, leaning forward. What's the catch? The catch, David says evenly, is that it requires us to rethink how we measure productivity. Success isn't about hours logged, but results achieved. It means trusting employees to manage their time effectively when given the right tools and clear objectives. A lovely sentiment, Parker says with a dismissive wave. But business runs on measurable metrics, not trust in good feelings. David keeps his expression neutral, though he notices Emily's slight frown at Parker's interruption. The metrics are included in your packets, he replies. Page 12 shows the key performance indicators we track, all quantifiable and directly tied to business outcomes. The discussion continues, becoming increasingly technical as board members dig into the details. Throughout, David maintains his composure, answering each question thoughtfully but succinctly. Emily interjects occasionally to provide context or redirect the conversation, her support subtle but clear. Only Parker maintains an overtly skeptical stance, questioning every assumption, challenging every projection. His opposition seems personal rather than professional, his gaze flicking between David and Emily with poorly concealed suspicion. I'm curious, Parker says during a brief lull. How did this proposal come to your attention, Emily? It seems an unusual choice for board-level consideration, especially from he glances at David, mid-level engineer. There's a loaded pause. Everyone in the room recognizes the subtext. Why is the CEO championing this particular employee's idea? What's the connection? Emily meets Parker's gaze with cool professionalism. I believe in promoting innovation regardless of its source, Parker. Mr. Marshall's proposal addresses several strategic priorities we identified in our last quarterly review, particularly regarding talent retention and operational efficiency. And the fact that you're creating a director-level position for him has nothing to do with other considerations? Parker presses, his insinuation hanging in the air. The room temperature seems to drop several degrees. David tenses, recognizing the danger in Parker's implication. Before he can speak, Emily responds, her voice carrying the quiet authority that has propelled her to the top of the corporate ladder. The proposal stands on its own merits, as does Mr. Marshall's qualification for the position. If you have specific concerns about either, I suggest you address them directly rather than through innuendo. Parker's smile doesn't reach his eyes. Just doing my due diligence, Emily. The board has a responsibility to understand the rationale behind significant organizational changes. Indeed, Emily agrees coldly. Perhaps we could return to the actual content of the proposal. The tension eventually dissipates as the meeting continues, but David notices the calculating look that remains in Parker's eyes. He's made an enemy today, though he's not entirely sure why. When the presentation concludes, the board votes to approve the project with a 6-month trial period. It's a qualified victory and not the full endorsement David had hoped for, but enough to move forward. As the meeting adjourns, board members filter out, some stopping to congratulate David or ask additional questions. Parker approaches last, extending his hand with a politician's smile. Impressive presentation, Marshall. You've certainly made an impact in a short time. David accepts the handshake, feeling the slightly excessive pressure of Parker's grip. Thank you. I'm passionate about improving our systems. Yes, I can see that. Parker glances toward Emily, who is engaged in conversation with another board member. Word of advice, be careful about mixing business with other interests. Corporate politics can be unforgiving. Before David can respond to the thinly veiled warning, Parker moves away, leaving David with the distinct impression that he's suddenly involved in a game whose rules he doesn't fully understand. Emily approaches as the room empties, her expression professionally pleased. Well done. They rarely approve new initiatives so quickly. Thank you for the opportunity, David responds sincerely, and for defending the proposal against Parker's concerns. A flash of annoyance crosses Emily's features. Parker has his own agenda. Don't let it concern you. She glances at her watch. We should discuss next steps. My office tomorrow morning at 9? I'll be there, David confirms. As they part ways, David can't shake the feeling that his life has just become considerably more complicated. The promotion is everything he could have hoped for professionally. But Parker's veiled threats suggest that navigating the corporate politics of the executive level will require skills he hasn't needed before. And then there's Emily herself, his boss, his champion, and something else he can't quite define. The woman who builds blanket forts with her son, and the CEO who commands boardrooms with equal effectiveness. Where exactly do they stand now? Saturday will be their first meeting outside of work since the storm. Not as CEO and employee, but as parents, as friends. The boundary between their professional and personal lives has blurred, creating a new territory neither of them has mapped. As David packs up his presentation materials, he reflects that some storms don't end when the rain stops. They simply transform, reshaping the landscape in ways that can't be predicted or controlled. The real question is whether what emerges from the transformation will be better or worse than what came before. With that thought lingering, he heads back to his cubicle, soon to be in office, to begin planning the next phase of a journey that started with a rejected proposal and a knock on his door during the worst storm of the year. Saturday morning dawns clear and bright, a perfect Texas autumn day, with no hint of the storms that had ravaged the area weeks before. David helps Lily pick out her outfit for the museum trip, a task that involves considerably more debate than he had anticipated. But what if Jacob doesn't like purple? Lily frets, discarding her third shirt option. I'm pretty sure Jacob won't care what color you're wearing, David assures her, though he's touched by her concern. He'll just be happy to see you. Lily considers this, then reaches decisively for her favorite science-themed t-shirt featuring the periodic table. This one, because we're going to a science place. Perfect choice, David agrees, trying to ignore the flutter of nerves in his own stomach. He tells himself it's just the natural awkwardness of social interactions outside work, not anything to do with seeing Emily in a personal context again. The Children's Science Museum is already bustling when they arrive. David spots Emily and Jacob near the ticket counter, him in neatly pressed khakis, her in designer jeans that somehow look both casual and elegant. Lily calls out excitedly, and Jacob's face lights up, though he waits for his mother's nod before approaching. Jacob's been talking about this all week, Emily says, her tone navigating the space between professional and friendly. Lily made a list of exhibits to show him, David responds, watching as the children rush toward a magnetic field demonstration. Their easy friendship, a striking contrast to the careful dance of the adults. Congratulations on the board approval, Emily says after a moment. Your presentation was excellent. Thank you, David replies, though I think Parker Thompson remains unconvinced. A shadow crosses Emily's face. Parker has concerns that go beyond the proposal itself. I gathered that, David says carefully. He seemed to imply something about our working relationship. Emily's expression tightens almost imperceptibly. Parker and I have history. He views any male colleague I support as competition, regardless of context. Competition? David raises an eyebrow, unable to stop himself. Are you and he? No, Emily answers firmly. We dated briefly 3 years ago. It didn't work out, but he's had difficulty accepting that, particularly since his father is grooming him to eventually take over as CEO. The revelation adds a new dimension to Parker's hostility. And he sees me as a threat to that plan? He sees you as having an influence with me that he doesn't understand, Emily clarifies. Parker measures relationships in terms of power and advantage. The idea that I might promote someone based solely on merit doesn't fit his worldview. Before David can respond, Lily calls out excitedly, Come see what Jacob can do with the magnets. The children's enthusiasm proves infectious, drawing the adults into their exploration. The museum is designed for interactive learning, with exhibits that engage visitors of all ages. David finds himself genuinely enjoying the experience, particularly watching the different approaches the children take. Lily diving in with enthusiastic experimentation. Jacob more methodical but equally curious. Emily, too, seems to relax gradually, her CEO persona softening as she engages with the exhibits alongside her son. When Jacob successfully builds a complex structure in the engineering section, her pride is evident and unguarded. He's got a real talent for spatial reasoning, David observes as they watch the children collaborate on a bridge design. Yes, Emily agrees. His teachers say he could have an aptitude for architecture or engineering. I've been trying to nurture that, though I don't always know the best way. You're doing fine, David assures her. Look how focused he is. That doesn't happen without encouragement. Emily glances at him with a hint of vulnerability rarely visible at the office. Sometimes I wonder, balancing everything, it's harder than I expected when I took the CEO position. Single parenting is hard enough without adding corporate leadership to the mix, David acknowledges. You should be proud of what you've accomplished. A small smile touches Emily's lips. Thank you. That's not something I hear often. They move through the museum at the children's pace, stopping for hands-on activities and demonstrations. At the physics exhibit, a staff member asks for volunteers, and Lily's hand shoots up immediately. When she's selected, she pulls Jacob along with her, his initial reluctance giving way to excitement as they help demonstrate the principles of momentum with giant pendulums. She's good for him, Emily observes, watching Jacob laugh as the experiment produces unexpected results. He needs that spontaneity. I'm afraid he gets his caution from me. And she could use some of his thoughtfulness, David responds. They balance each other. The comment hangs between them, layered with meaning that extends beyond their children. For a moment, they simply stand side by side, watching the interaction with shared parental pride that transcends their complicated professional relationship. At lunchtime, they find the museum cafe already crowded. Maybe we should try somewhere else, Emily suggests, surveying the limited seating. There's a park across the street with picnic tables, David offers. We could grab sandwiches from that deli on the corner. The idea of an impromptu picnic seems to surprise Emily slightly, as if spontaneous outdoor dining isn't part of her usual repertoire, but she nods agreement. The park provides a welcome respite from the museum's energy. Under a sprawling oak tree, they spread out their simple meal, while the children chatter about their favorite exhibits. David notices that Emily has relaxed visibly since the morning, her posture less rigid, her smiles coming more easily. I don't do this often enough, she admits quietly while the children are distracted by a passing dog. Just unstructured time with Jacob. There's always another meeting, another crisis, another deadline. It's never easy to balance, David acknowledges. After Maria died, I swung too far in the other direction for a while. so focused on being there for Lily that my work suffered. I'm still trying to find the middle ground. Is that why you developed the workflow system? To find that balance? David nods. Originally, yes. It started as a selfish project. How could I be more efficient at work to have more time at home? Then I realized I wasn't the only one struggling with it. Emily watches Jacob, who is now showing Lily how to make a paper airplane from a napkin. I keep telling myself that my work benefits him in the long run. Financial security, opportunities, a role model of female leadership. But days like today make me wonder if I've been rationalizing too much. You don't have to choose, David says gently. That's the whole point. Good systems should support whole lives, not force impossible choices. Emily meets his gaze, something vulnerable and questioning in her eyes. Before she can respond, Jacob approaches with his carefully constructed paper airplane. Mom, watch, he calls, launching the creation with surprising skill. The plane soars in a perfect arc before landing several yards away. Lily applauds enthusiastically, then grabs another napkin, determined to create her own version. The moment between the adults passes, but something has shifted subtly. A deeper understanding, perhaps, or the recognition of shared values beneath their different approaches to life. After lunch, they return to the museum for the robotics demonstration, the highlight of the day's schedule. The children sit cross-legged at the front of the audience area, completely absorbed in the presentation. David and Emily find seats just behind them, close enough to supervise but giving the kids their independence. I've been meaning to ask, Emily says quietly as they wait for the show to begin. How is the transition to the new position going? Any issues I should be aware of? Smooth so far, David responds, appreciating her directness. The team seems receptive to the changes, though I've noticed some of Parker's allies watching the project with particular interest. Emily frowns slightly. Have there been any direct interferences? Nothing concrete, just a feeling of being under scrutiny. Let me know if that changes, Emily says, her tone shifting momentarily to that of the CEO. This project is too important to be derailed by office politics. David nods, then hesitates before asking, is it going to be a problem? Us being here together today? Emily considers the question carefully. It shouldn't be. Colleagues with children socialize occasionally. There's nothing inappropriate about it. She pauses, then adds more quietly, but perception matters in leadership positions. We should be mindful. The robotics demonstration begins before David can respond, the presenter capturing everyone's attention with a small humanoid robot that can respond to voice commands. The children are enthralled, especially when volunteers are invited to program simple instructions for the robot to follow. When Jacob is selected, his face shows a mixture of excitement and anxiety. He looks back at his mother, who gives him an encouraging nod. David notices the tension in Emily's posture, the universal parental concern of wanting your child to succeed while fearing their disappointment. Jacob approaches the robot with careful concentration, listening intently to the instructor's guidance. When he successfully programs a complex sequence that makes the robot dance, his face illuminates with pride. Emily's relief and joy are palpable, her usual reserve completely forgotten as she applauds her son's achievement. It's these unguarded moments, David realizes, that reveal the person behind the professional facade, the mother who feels every triumph and uncertainty alongside her child, despite the controlled image she presents to the world. The rest of the afternoon passes quickly, the children's energy seemingly inexhaustible as they explore the remaining exhibits. By closing time, however, even Lily's enthusiasm has begun to wane, her usual bouncing steps slowing as they head toward the exit. Ice cream, David suggests, recognizing the signs of impending fatigue. There's a good place just down the block. The offer reinvigorates both children immediately. Emily looks momentarily hesitant, perhaps calculating sugar intake or dinner schedules, but Jacob's hopeful expression decides the matter. A small cone wouldn't hurt, she concedes with a smile that transforms her face. The ice cream parlor is charmingly old-fashioned, with red vinyl booths and a jukebox in the corner. The children deliberate over flavors with the seriousness of scientists selecting experimental variables, while David and Emily exchange amused glances at their intensity. Chocolate chip, Jacob finally decides. Rainbow sherbet, Lily declares almost simultaneously. With cones in hand, they settle into a booth, children on one side, adults on the other. The simple pleasure of ice cream on a Saturday afternoon creates a bubble of normalcy around them, temporarily suspending the complexities of their usual lives. "This was really fun," Lily announces, between licks of her colorful cone. "Can we do it again next weekend?" The question hangs in the air, laden with implications. David glances at Emily, unsure how to respond without overstepping. "We'll have to see what everyone's schedules look like," Emily answers diplomatically. "But I think we'd all enjoy that." Jacob nods enthusiastically, a rare show of animation from the usually reserved boy. "Could we go to the aquarium next time? They have shark feedings on Saturdays." "Sharks!" Lily's eyes widen with excitement. "Dad, can we?" David meets Emily's gaze across the table, a silent question passing between them. Is this becoming a regular arrangement? Are they creating expectations in their children that might be complicated to fulfill? Yet the hope in both children's faces makes it difficult to hedge. "The aquarium sounds great," David says finally, "if it works with your mom's schedule." "I'll make it work," Emily responds with unexpected firmness, then adds more softly, "Some things are worth rearranging priorities for." The statement seems to surprise even her, as if she's just recognized a truth she hasn't fully acknowledged before. David finds himself studying her face, trying to read beneath the careful composure. There's something shifting in Emily Carter, subtle but unmistakable, like ice beginning to thaw under persistent sunlight. As they finish their ice cream and prepare to part ways, the children exchange elaborate goodbyes that involve secret handshakes apparently developed during their museum exploration. David and Emily watch with the bemused expressions of parents witnessing the mysterious social rituals of childhood. "Thank you for today," Emily says when they have a moment of relative privacy. "Jacob hasn't been this animated in, well, a very long time." "Lily had a wonderful time too," David responds. "She's already planning their aquarium adventure in detail, I can tell." A brief silence falls between them, not uncomfortable but full of unspoken thoughts. They've crossed a line today, moving from colleagues who experienced an unusual circumstance together to something more intentional. Friends, co-parents of suddenly inseparable children? The definition remains unclear. "About the office," Emily says finally, her tone careful. "It might be best if we maintain our usual professional boundaries there, for clarity's sake." "Of course," David agrees readily. "I have no interest in complicating your position or fueling office gossip." Emily nods, seemingly relieved by his understanding. "I'll check my calendar and text you about next Saturday." "Perfect," David confirms. "Sharks and whatever else the aquarium has to offer." As they guide their children toward their respective cars, David can't help but reflect on the strange path that has led them here. From a storm-driven emergency to a planned series of weekend outings. Life rarely moves in straight lines, he thinks. Sometimes the most significant journeys begin with unexpected detours. So, Monday morning brings a jarring return to corporate reality. David's new office on the executive floor stands as a physical manifestation of his changed status, generating mixed responses throughout the company. Supportive but wistful former teammates, cautiously optimistic new team members, and inevitable speculation about his rapid advancement. While reviewing the implementation timeline, a knock interrupts his concentration. Parker Thompson leans against the doorframe, impeccably dressed in what must be an obscenely expensive suit. "Marshall, getting settled in your new kingdom?" His smile doesn't reach his eyes. "Still arranging the furniture," David responds neutrally. "What can I help you with?" Parker steps in, glancing around with barely concealed judgment at the space. Modest compared to his corner office, but a major upgrade from David's former cubicle. "Just thought I'd welcome you to the executive floor," Parker says, settling uninvited into a chair across from David's desk. Quite a leap from mid-level engineer to director in a matter of weeks. Very impressive. The implication hangs unspoken but clear in his tone. David maintains a professional expression, refusing to rise to the bait. "The project needed focused leadership," he says simply. "I appreciate the opportunity to provide it." Parker studies him with the calculating gaze of someone assessing a potential threat. "You know, I've been curious about something. How exactly did Emily come to champion your proposals so enthusiastically? It seemed to appear on her radar rather suddenly." David chooses his words carefully, aware of the trap being laid. I presented it through normal channels initially. Ms. Carter reviewed the full documentation after the preliminary meeting and recognized its potential value to the company. Hmm, Parker murmurs, unconvinced. And there were no extenuating circumstances that might have influenced her evaluation? The question crosses a line, its insinuation unmistakable. David feels a flush of anger, but keeps his voice steady. If you have concerns about the merits of the project, Parker, I'm happy to walk you through the data again. Otherwise, I have a team waiting for direction on our first implementation phase. Parker's smile turns cold. Just friendly advice, David. Emily has a pattern of elevating men she finds interesting. They rarely last long once the novelty wears off. I'll keep that in mind, David responds evenly. Was there anything else? Standing, Parker straightens his already perfect tie. Just remember that in this company, long-term success depends on more than one person's favor. The board values stability and clear lines of authority. Disruptions to either tend to be corrected eventually. The threat, thinly veiled as it is, hangs in the air as Parker strolls out, leaving David with the distinct impression that he's made an enemy whose resources and influence far exceed his own. Disturbed but determined not to be distracted, David returns to his work, though Parker's words linger in his mind. Is there truth to his claim about Emily's pattern? And more importantly, is David's promotion genuinely based on merit, or has personal connection influenced Emily's judgment? The question troubles him throughout the morning, creating a shadow of doubt that's still present when he attends his scheduled project update with Emily that afternoon. Her office, like her, presents an impeccable professional face to the world, organized, elegant, and designed to impress. Emily herself sits behind her substantial desk, reviewing documents on her tablet as David enters. David, she greets him with a nod, her tone and demeanor purely professional, exactly as they had agreed. How is the team formation progressing? On schedule, he reports, taking the visitor's chair across from her. We've filled most key positions, though we're still looking for a UX specialist with the right experience. They proceed through the agenda efficiently, discussing timelines, resource allocations, and potential obstacles. Emily is sharp and focused, offering strategic insights while leaving implementation details to David's discretion. It's a productive meeting by any standard, with none of the tension or awkwardness he had feared might follow their weekend outing. As they conclude, however, David finds himself hesitating, Parker's insinuations still needling at his thoughts. Was there something else? Emily asked, noting his uncharacteristic pause. David weighs his options, then decides on directness. Parker Thompson paid me a visit this morning. Emily's expression doesn't change, but something flickers in her eyes. I see. And what did Parker have to say? He implied that my promotion might be based on personal considerations rather than professional merit. A brief silence falls between them. Emily places her pen down with deliberate precision. And you're concerned that might be true, she states rather than asks, her voice carefully neutral. I'm concerned about perception, David clarifies, about how it might affect the project's credibility and my ability to lead the team effectively. Emily studies him for a long moment, her gaze unreadable. Do you believe you deserve this promotion, David? Yes, he answers without hesitation. But my belief isn't what matters if others question it. Actually, it's precisely what matters, Emily counters. If you doubt yourself, others will too. She leans forward slightly. Let me be clear. You were promoted because your proposal addresses a critical business need and because your background at Nexus gives you the expertise to implement it successfully. Anyone suggesting otherwise is either misinformed or deliberately creating discord. Her directness is reassuring, but David presses on, needing to address the elephant in the room. And our personal connection, the fact that our children are becoming friends, is separate, Emily states firmly. Would I have recognized your capabilities without the unexpected circumstances that brought us together? Perhaps not as quickly. Does that make the recognition less valid? Absolutely not. David absorbs this, finding her logic sound but still concerned about appearances. Parker seemed to suggest there's a pattern of you promoting men who, he trails off, suddenly uncomfortable with completing the thought. Emily's expression hardens. Who what, David? Whom I find interesting? With whom I have personal relationships? She stands, her professional composure intact but anger evident in the tension of her shoulders. This is exactly why women in leadership positions cannot have normal human interactions without them being sexualized or questioned. That's not what I meant, David protests, realizing too late how his concern might be interpreted. Isn't it? Emily challenges. Would you be having these doubts if I were a male CEO who recognized talent in an employee after getting to know them better? The question lands with uncomfortable precision. David considers it honestly before responding. You're right, he acknowledges. I'm sorry. I let Parker's insinuations get under my skin. Emily's expression softens marginally. Parker is threatened by anyone he perceives as having influence with me. His comments say more about him than about either of us. She returns to her seat, visibly recalibrating. That said, perception does matter in leadership positions. We should maintain appropriate professional boundaries, which is what we already agreed to do. David nods, relieved that his clumsy handling of the situation hasn't damaged their working relationship. Of course, I appreciate your directness. One more thing, Emily adds, her tone shifting to something more personal. Jacob hasn't stopped talking about the aquarium this weekend. I've already cleared my schedule for Saturday morning. The simple statement, delivered almost as an afterthought, nevertheless carries significant weight. Emily Carter, CEO known for her packed calendar and relentless work ethic, is rearranging priorities for a children's outing that has no professional benefit. Lily's excited too, David responds with a smile. I've been instructed to research shark species in advance, so we're properly prepared. A brief smile touches Emily's lips, the genuine expression so different from her professional mask. Jacob has already created a spreadsheet of exhibits organized by viewing priority. The moment of shared parental amusement passes quickly as Emily glances at her watch. I have another meeting in 5 minutes. Anything else we need to discuss? That covers every mouthing, Arvian, David confirms, gathering his materials and standing to leave. As he reaches the door, Emily speaks again. David, don't let Parker make you doubt yourself. He's very good at finding insecurities and exploiting them. That's how he's advanced as far as he has. I'll remember that, David promises, struck by the insight into corporate politics that has never been part of his professional experience until now. Back in his own office, David reflects on the conversation, recognizing that he's navigating unfamiliar territory. Not just the higher-level position, but the complex intersection of professional and personal relationships at the executive level. The rules are different here, the stakes higher, the potential for misinterpretation greater. Yet despite the complications, he finds himself looking forward to Saturday with a sense of anticipation that has nothing to do with career advancement and everything to do with the simple pleasure of watching his daughter's friendship with Jacob unfold, and perhaps continuing to discover the woman behind Emily's CEO persona. The week progresses with the controlled chaos of a major project launch. David divides his time between assembling his team, finalizing technical specifications, and navigating the political landscape of executive-level management. He encounters subtle resistance from departments aligned with Parker, countered by unexpected support from other directors who have chafed under the company's traditional approach to workflow management. By Friday afternoon, he's exhausted but satisfied with their progress. The core team is in place, initial development environments are set up, and the project has momentum. He's reviewing the week's accomplishments when his phone buzzes with a text from Emily. Jacob has the flu. Doctor says contagious for at least 72 hours. Need to postpone aquarium. He's devastated. David feels a pang of disappointment, both for the children's sake and, he admits to himself, for his own. He texts back immediately. Sorry to hear that. Tell Jacob that sharks will wait. Lily will understand. 3 dots appear, indicating Emily is typing a response. They disappear, then reappear, suggesting she's reconsidering her words. Finally, a message comes through. He's asking if Lily could video chat later. Would that be too much trouble? The request surprises David, not because of the chat itself, but because Emily is facilitating it. From what he's gathered, she typically maintains strict boundaries around Jacob's activities and social interactions. No trouble at all, he responds, Lily would love that. Just let us know when. An hour later, Lily sits cross-legged on the couch, David's tablet propped on the coffee table, as Jacob appears on the screen. The boy looks miserable, pale, and tired, but brightens visibly when he sees Lily. Emily hovers in the background, adjusting Jacob's pillows and looking uncharacteristically domestic in casual clothes with her hair pulled back. The children chatter about the postponed aquarium trip and school projects, their easy friendship a contrast to the complicated adult world around them. David watches from the kitchen, giving Lily her privacy while staying close enough to supervise. After about 15 minutes, Jacob's energy begins to flag, his responses becoming slower. Emily leans into the frame, suggesting gently that he needs to rest. As Lily says her goodbyes, promising to send him pictures of her science project, Emily takes the tablet. "Thank you for this," she says, her expression softer than David ever sees at the office. It's the first time he's smiled all day. "Any time," David responds sincerely. "I hope he feels better soon." There's a brief pause, as if Emily wants to say more but is constrained by the context. "I should let you get back to your evening." "Good night, David." "Good night, Emily." The call ends, leaving David with a strange sense of incompleteness. It's odd, he reflects, how quickly their children have formed a bond, and how that connection has created a bridge between two adults whose paths might otherwise never have intersected meaningfully, despite working for the same company. Later that night, after Lily is asleep, David receives another text from Emily. "Jacob finally sleeping, fever down. He made me promise we'll reschedule aquarium as soon as he's well." David responds, "Absolutely. Sharks aren't going anywhere." A minute passes, then another message appears. "Thank you for understanding. Not just about today, about everything." The simple text carries more weight than its words alone suggest. An acknowledgement of the unusual situation they find themselves in, navigating professional boundaries and personal connections simultaneously. David considers his response carefully, aware of the delicate balance they're maintaining. Finally, he types, "Some storms bring unexpected gifts." He sends the message, recognizing her own words from weeks ago. There's a long pause before three simple words appear on his screen. Yes, they do. 3 months passed since Jacob's flu and the rescheduled aquarium trip. That outing had marked the beginning of a regular weekend routine for the two families, while professionally the workflow optimization project transformed from planning to successful implementation across Innovex. David's team grew from initial skepticism to cohesive commitment as early results validated their approach. Overtime decreased by 27%, while productivity metrics held steady, exactly as David had predicted. It's a Friday afternoon when the situation finally escalates beyond containment. David is presenting the quarterly results to the executive team, highlighting the significant improvements in departmental efficiency. The data is compelling, clear evidence that the new system delivers on its promises. "These numbers are impressive," acknowledges Thompson Sr., the board chairman. "Better than I expected, frankly." "Thank you, sir," David responds. "The team has worked incredibly hard to ensure smooth implementation. Yet I'm hearing concerns from several department heads." Parker interjects smoothly. "Complaints about the system being inflexible for special projects, about reduced face time affecting team cohesion." David meets Parker's gaze directly. "Change always generates some resistance. We're addressing specific concerns through regular feedback sessions and adjustments where warranted. But the core philosophy remains problematic." Parker persists. "This, what did you call it, results rather than hours approach fundamentally undermines traditional management oversight." "That's precisely the point," Emily speaks up from her position at the head of the table. "Traditional oversight has led to burnout, decreased innovation, and talent loss. The data supports the new direction." Parker smiles thinly. "Data can be interpreted in multiple ways, Emily. I've taken the liberty of conducting an independent analysis." He distributes a document to everyone at the table, a detailed critique of the project's methodology and results, questioning everything from measurement techniques to long-term sustainability. It's professionally prepared and devastating in its implications, suggesting that initial positive results mask deeper structural problems. David scans the document quickly, recognizing the strategic attack for what it is. Parker has been gathering ammunition for months, waiting for the perfect moment to undermine not just the project, but David's credibility, and by extension, Emily's judgment in promoting him. This is the first I'm seeing of these concerns, David says carefully. I'd appreciate the opportunity to address them point by point. Of course, Parker responds with false generosity. Though perhaps we should also discuss the unusual circumstances surrounding this project's approval and leadership. The room temperature seems to drop several degrees. Everyone present understands Parker's implication that personal rather than professional considerations influence Emily's decision-making. If you have specific concerns about process, Parker, you should raise them directly, Emily states, her tone carrying a warning edge. I'm simply suggesting that objectivity might have been compromised, Parker replies, his expression innocent, but his intent clear, given certain connections that have developed. David feels a surge of anger at the deliberate attempt to undermine Emily's professional reputation, but before he can respond, Thompson Sr. clears his throat. This seems to be veering from the agenda, the chairman observes. David will review your data and Parker's analysis and continue this discussion next week. In the meantime, please prepare responses to the specific technical concerns raised. The meeting adjourns with an undercurrent of tension. As executives filter out, David gathers his materials, aware that a critical line has been crossed. Parker's attack is no longer confined to quiet undermining, but has emerged as an open challenge to both the project and the professional relationship between David and Emily. Emily remains at the table, reviewing documents with deliberate focus as the room empties. David waits until they're alone before speaking. I should have seen this coming, he says quietly. He's been gathering information for months. Emily looks up, her expression controlled, but anger evident in her eyes. This isn't about the project, not really. No, David agrees. It's about you and by extension, me. He's becoming more direct in his attacks, Emily observes, which means he feels threatened. By the project's success? By everything it represents. Emily closes her folder with precise movements. Change that he didn't initiate, authority he doesn't control, and yes, by our connection, whatever he perceives that to be. The careful word choice highlights the ambiguity of their relationship. Professional colleagues, weekend companions through their children, and something less defined but increasingly significant that neither has put into words. What's our next move, David asks, recognizing that they have entered dangerous territory where corporate politics intersects with personal dynamics. Emily considers the question with the strategic thinking that has propelled her to the top of the corporate ladder. We address the technical concerns methodically and comprehensively. We present irrefutable evidence of the project's success, and we continue to maintain appropriate professional boundaries. And the personal implications? David presses gently. Emily meets his gaze directly. We need to be careful, David. Parker is looking for ammunition to discredit both of us. The warning is clear. Their weekend outings, the growing connection between their families, could become collateral damage in Parker's campaign to undermine Emily's leadership and David's position. Should we cancel tomorrow, David asks, referring to their planned hiking trip with the children? Take a step back until this blows over? Something flashes in Emily's eyes, a momentary vulnerability quickly masked by pragmatic calculation. That might be prudent, she acknowledges, though her tone suggests reluctance, at least until after the board review next month. David nods, accepting the logic while feeling a surprising weight of disappointment. I'll talk to Lily. She'll understand. Jacob will be devastated, Emily says quietly. But it's temporary, just until we secure the project's future. The conversation ends there, both of them retreating to the safety of professional concerns rather than examining the personal implications more deeply. As David heads back to his office, he reflects on how quickly priorities shift in the corporate world, how success creates its own vulnerabilities, and how connections that matter must sometimes be sacrificed for strategic advantage. That evening, explaining the situation to Lily proves more difficult than anticipated. Her 7-year-old perspective doesn't easily grasp corporate politics or the need to suspend a friendship because of adult complications. But why can't we see Jacob tomorrow, she asks, genuine confusion in her eyes. We were going to show him the trail with the waterfall. David searches for an explanation that won't oversimplify, yet remains age-appropriate. Jacob's mom and I work together, sweetie. And sometimes at work, things get complicated. We need to focus on an important project right now, which means taking a break from weekend activities. That's stupid, Lily declares with the blunt assessment of childhood. What does hiking have to do with your work? It's a fair question, one that highlights the artificiality of the separation they're imposing. It's just for a little while, David assures her. Once the project is more secure, we can go back to our regular adventures. Lily's disappointment is palpable but tempered by his promise that the situation is temporary. After she's asleep, David texts Emily to confirm he's explained things to Lily, receiving a brief acknowledgement in return. The exchange feels strangely formal after months of increasingly warm communication, as if they're already retreating to safer professional territory. Saturday morning arrives with the peculiar emptiness of a canceled plan. David tries to compensate by suggesting alternative activities, but Lily's enthusiasm is muted. By afternoon, her resilience has returned somewhat, especially when David proposes building a new model rocket to launch the following weekend. They're halfway through assembling the rocket when David's phone rings. Emily's name appears on the screen, surprising him. She rarely calls, preferring text for personal communication. Emily, he answers, hearing immediate distress in her voice. Jacob's missing, she says without preamble, her usual composure shattered. He was in the backyard, and I was on a conference call. When I checked 15 minutes later, he was gone. David's heart rate accelerates instantly. Have you called the police? Yes, they're on their way, but David, her voice breaks slightly. He left a note. He's trying to go to the waterfall trail to meet Lily. Understanding dawns immediately. He didn't realize the trip was canceled. I told him last night, but he was so upset. I thought he understood, but Emily's voice carries a rare edge of panic. He's never done anything like this before. Where are you now? David asks, already moving toward his keys. At home, waiting for the police. They said not to leave in case he comes back. I know that trail, David says decisively. It's about 3 miles from your house. I'll start searching there immediately. David, you don't have to. I'm already on my way, he interrupts gently. Text me your address. I'll drive by there first. Check the route he might have taken. There's a brief pause. Then Emily says quietly, Thank you. Minutes later, David and Lily are in the car, heading toward Emily's address in one of the city's most exclusive neighborhoods. He's explained the situation in simple terms to Lily, whose worry for her friend has overridden any excitement about the impromptu adventure. Jacob doesn't like to be outside alone, Lily observes as they drive. He told me it makes him nervous. That's good information, David assures her. It means he'll stick to paths and roads, not wander into the woods. They drive slowly past Emily's house, an imposing modern structure with manicured landscaping, noting the police car already parked in the circular driveway. David doesn't stop, focusing instead on checking the most direct route a 7-year-old might take toward the state park that contains the waterfall trail. The logical path would follow the main road for about a mile before turning onto a less traveled county road that eventually reaches the park entrance. David drives this route slowly, both he and Lily scanning the roadside intently for any sign of Jacob. They're about to reach the turn onto the county road when Lily suddenly points. Dad, look! At first, David sees nothing, then catches a flash of blue partially hidden behind a bus stop shelter, the same color as the jacket Jacob had worn on their previous hiking trip. David pulls over immediately, heart pounding. Stay in the car, he instructs Lily, though he leaves the door open so she can call out if needed. Approaching the bus shelter cautiously to avoid startling the child, David feels relief wash over him as he confirms it's indeed Jacob, sitting with his knees pulled up to his chest, a small backpack beside him. The boy looks up as David approaches, his expression shifting from fear to recognition to embarrassment. Mr. David, he says in a small voice. Hey, buddy, David responds gently, crouching to eye level. You gave us quite a scare. Jacob's eyes fill with tears. I wanted to go to the waterfall. Mom said we couldn't go hiking anymore, but I thought maybe Lily would still be there. Jacob! Lily calls from the car, unable to contain herself any longer. We're here! The boy's face brightens momentarily at his friend's voice, then crumples with the realization of what he's done. Mom's going to be so mad. She's not mad, David assures him, pulling out his phone. She's worried, really worried. Let's call her right now, okay? Emily answers on the first ring, her voice tight with anxiety. David? I've found him, David says immediately. He's safe, not a scratch on him. The sound Emily makes is somewhere between a tweet and a sigh of relief. Where are you? At the bus shelter on Oakwood, just before the turn to the county road. He was trying to get to the trail. I'll be right there, Emily says, emotion making her voice unsteady. Keep him with you. We're not going anywhere, David promises. While they wait, David sits beside Jacob on the bench, Lily joining them after David determines it's safe for her to leave the car. The children sit close together, Lily chattering about the model rocket to distract Jacob from his distress, while David keeps a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. Within minutes, a sleek black SUV pulls up behind David's car, and Emily emerges, moving faster than her usual measured pace. When Jacob sees her, he stands uncertainly, caught between relief and fear of consequences. Emily closes the distance in seconds, dropping to her knees to pull her son into a fierce embrace. Jacob, she whispers, holding him tightly. Don't ever do that again. Ever. I'm sorry, Mom, the boy mumbles into her shoulder. I just wanted to see the waterfall with Lily. Emily holds him at arm's length, examining him for any sign of injury, her professional composure completely abandoned in maternal concern. Satisfied that he's unharmed, she looks up at David, who still stands nearby with Lily. I can't thank you enough, she says, her voice raw with emotion. If you hadn't found him. But we did, David says gently. He's safe, that's what matters. Emily nods, visibly pulling herself together as she stands, keeping one arm firmly around Jacob's shoulders. I need to call the police. Let them know he's been found. While Emily makes the call, David kneels beside Jacob. That was a pretty scary adventure, huh? The boy nods solemnly. I didn't know it was so far, and there were big cars going fast. Going places alone can be dangerous, David agrees. Next time you really want to go somewhere, talk to your mom first, okay? I bet you can work something out. Jacob glances toward Emily, who is finishing her call. She's been working all the time again, even on weekends. She said we couldn't see you and Lily anymore because of her job. The simple observation carries more insight than the boy can possibly understand, cutting straight to the heart of the artificial separation Emily has tried to maintain between her professional and personal lives. Before David can respond, Emily returns, her composure partially restored though strain still shows around her eyes. The police are calling off the search, she says. They'll stop by later to follow up. She looks at Jacob. We need to go home now. The boy nods obediently, but hesitates, looking at Lily. Sorry about the waterfall. It's okay, Lily assures him with the resilience of childhood. We can go another time. The simple exchange highlights the absurdity of the adult's situation. Children who see only the value of friendship set against the complicated professional calculations that have led to its temporary suspension. Emily seems to recognize this too, her expression softening as she looks at the children, then at David. Perhaps we've been overthinking things, she says quietly. We might have been, David agrees, understanding her meaning immediately. A moment of silent communication passes between them. Recognition that their attempt to separate their personal and professional lives has created its own problems, forcing an artificial choice that serves neither their children's needs nor, perhaps, their own. We were building a model rocket, Lily announces into the thoughtful silence. It's going to go super high, right, Dad? That's the plan, David confirms, grateful for his daughter's ability to cut through tension with childlike directness. A rocket? Jacob's interest is immediately captured despite his recent ordeal. Like a real one that flies? We're not quite finished, David explains. Still need to attach the fins and the recovery parachute. Could I? Jacob begins hesitantly, looking up at his mother. Could I see it? Emily meets David's eyes over the children's heads, a silent question in her gaze. David nods slightly, understanding immediately. Why don't you both come over, he suggests. We can finish the rocket together, have some lunch. If that works for you, Emily? The invitation hangs in the air, not just an offer of immediate distraction for the children, but a deliberate step back toward the connection they've been attempting to sever for professional expediency. Emily hesitates only briefly before nodding. I think that would be good for all of us. An hour later, the scene in David's living room could not be further removed from the corporate tension of the previous day. Jacob and Lily sit cross-legged on the floor, meticulously applying decals to the nearly completed rocket. Their earlier distress has been replaced by the absorbed concentration of children engaged in a creative project. In the kitchen, David prepares sandwiches while Emily leans against the counter, both of them keeping the children in view through the open doorway. He's never done anything like this before, Emily says quietly, still processing the morning's events. Jacob's always been so cautious. He must have really wanted to see that waterfall, David observes, though they both understand it wasn't the landscape feature that motivated the boy's escape attempt. Emily sighs, running a hand through her usually perfect hair. I handled this badly, trying to compartmentalize everything. It clearly didn't work. We both agreed it was the prudent approach, David reminds her. Prudent for our careers, perhaps. Not for them. She gestures toward the children. Not for ourselves either, she adds more softly. David sets down the knife he's been using to spread peanut butter, turning to face her directly. So where does that leave us? It's the most direct acknowledgement either has made of the undefined but growing connection between them. Something that has evolved beyond professional courtesy or the coincidental friendship of their children. Emily meets his gaze steadily. I'm not entirely sure, but I know that pretending this isn't happening isn't the answer. This, David repeats, needing her to define what she means. This, Emily gestures between them, the four of us, the weekends, the fact that my son was willing to risk getting lost rather than lose his connection to your daughter. The fact that I've been miserable this week knowing we weren't going hiking tomorrow. The admission, particularly the last part, clearly costs her something in terms of vulnerability, a currency Emily Carter does not spend freely. I've been miserable too, David acknowledges quietly, and confused about why we're letting Parker Thompson dictate our personal lives. Because I've spent my entire career ensuring that my personal life never interferes with professional judgment, Emily responds. The separation has been necessary. Has it? David challenges gently. Or has it just been easier than finding balance? The question hangs between them, touching on the core philosophy that differentiates their approaches to life. Emily's careful compartmentalization versus David's pursuit of integration. Before she can respond, Jacob calls from the living room. Mom, come see, we finished the rocket. The children's excitement provides a momentary reprieve from the weighty conversation. David and Emily move to the living room, appropriately admiring the completed model with its carefully applied decals and precisely attached fins. Can we launch it today? Jacob asks eagerly. We need a bigger open space than the backyard, David explains, and permission from the Park Service. But maybe tomorrow? He glances at Emily, the question implicit. Tomorrow would be perfect, she confirms, a decision clearly made. The rocket launch can replace our hiking trip. The children cheer, their friendship instantly restored now that the adult-imposed barrier has been removed. As they race off to gather supplies for an imaginary mission control center, David and Emily find themselves alone again, the conversation necessarily continuing. Parker will use this against us, Emily says pragmatically. Against me, specifically. He'll suggest my judgment is compromised. Is it? David asks directly. Emily considers the question with characteristic thoroughness. I promoted you because you were the best person for the job. The project is succeeding because your approach is sound. Those are facts, not opinions influenced by personal feelings. And the personal feelings, David presses, stepping cautiously into territory they both avoided naming explicitly. Emily meets his gaze directly. Also facts, but separate ones. Can they stay separate, though? That's the real question. It's the crux of the matter. Whether the artificial boundaries they've attempted to maintain are sustainable or even desirable. Whether integration rather than separation might offer a more authentic path forward. I don't know, Emily admits with rare uncertainty. I've never tried to navigate this particular complexity before. Neither have I, David acknowledges. But I think we owe it to ourselves, and to them, to try finding a better way than simply canceling hiking trips and pretending we're just colleagues. Emily's expression softens. When did you become so wise about these things? Probably around the time a CEO showed up on my doorstep during a storm, David responds with a smile. Funny how life's biggest lessons often arrive in unexpected packages. The reference to their initial meeting, the circumstance that set everything in motion, brings a genuine smile to Emily's face. I've been thinking about that night a lot recently, she admits. How different everything might be if my car had broken down half a mile in the other direction. Or if I'd been less hospitable, David adds, remembering his momentary temptation to close the door on the CEO who had humiliated him hours earlier. But you weren't, Emily says softly. You opened your door and your home to someone who hadn't treated you particularly well. That says something significant about who you are, David. The observation carries weight beyond the simple word, an acknowledgement of the character she's come to recognize in him, the qualities that have drawn her beyond professional respect to something more personal. So what now, David asks, bringing them back to the practical question at hand. Emily considers this with the strategic thinking that has served her well professionally. We continue the project implementation as planned. We address Parker's technical concerns with data and results. And we stop pretending that our personal lives must be sacrificed for professional appearance. And if Parker makes good on his threats, uses our friendship against you with the board, then I'll deal with it, Emily says with quiet determination. I've spent my career proving myself in a male-dominated industry. I've earned the right to have both professional success and personal connections without one being used to undermine the other. The resolution in her voice makes it clear that a decision has been made, not just about weekend plans, but about the artificial separation she has maintained throughout her career. It's a subtle but profound shift, one that acknowledges the possibility of integration rather than compartmentalization. Before they can explore the implications further, the children return, Jacob clutching a paper decorated with hand-drawn buttons and dials. We made a control panel for the rocket launch, he announces proudly. Very impressive, Emily responds, her CEO persona nowhere in evidence as she crouches to examine the detailed drawing. This looks like serious mission control equipment. As the children explain their creation, David watches Emily interact with them. The warmth and attention she brings to the simple moment, so different from the calculated efficiency she displays at the office. Not for the first time, he wonders which is the more authentic version, or if perhaps the truth lies in the integration of both. The rest of the day unfolds with surprising naturalness. Lunch followed by board games, the children's excited planning for tomorrow's rocket launch, a simple dinner that Emily helps prepare. It's domestic and ordinary, in a way that would have seemed impossible months ago, when she was merely the intimidating CEO who had rejected his proposal. As evening approaches, Emily gathers their things, preparing to take a reluctant Jacob home. The boy hugs Lily with the unself-conscious affection of childhood, extracting promises about the specific color of parachute they'll use tomorrow. At the door, Emily pauses, something unresolved in her expression. About tomorrow, she begins. The forecast is perfect for rocket launching, David assures her. Clear skies, minimal wind. That's good to know, Emily acknowledges with a small smile. But I was actually thinking, perhaps we could make it a full day. The launch in the morning, then lunch, maybe that art festival downtown in the afternoon. The suggestion, a deliberate extension beyond their usual carefully timed outings, carries significance beyond the simple words. David recognizes it as a conscious step towards something more integrated, less compartmentalized. That sounds perfect, he responds, understanding everything she isn't explicitly saying. I think we'd all enjoy that. Emily holds his gaze for a moment longer than strictly necessary. Good, she says finally. Then it's a plan. The next month brings a whirlwind of professional and personal developments. The workflow project reaches a critical implementation milestone, with all departments now integrated into the new system. The board review, despite Parker's continued opposition, results in full approval and expanded funding based on the undeniable success metrics. On a personal level, the tentative boundaries between David and Emily continue to evolve. Their weekend outings with the children extend naturally into shared dinners, movie nights, and even a weekend camping trip that proved surprisingly successful despite Emily's initial trepidation about sleeping in a tent. The growing closeness between them hasn't gone unnoticed at the office. Whispers and speculative glances follow them in hallways, though Emily's reputation and David's professionalism keep the gossip relatively contained. Parker continues his campaign of subtle undermining, but with diminishing effect as the project's success becomes increasingly difficult to question. It's a Friday evening, nearly 6 months after the storm that first brought them together, when the final confrontation with Parker occurs. David is working late, finalizing the quarterly report, when Emily appears at his office door. "Do you have a minute?" she asks, her expression serious. "Of course," David responds, saving his document and giving her his full attention. Emily closes the door behind her, an unusual action that signals the private nature of the conversation. "Parker went to the board today," she says without preamble, "made a formal complaint about conflict of interest regarding our relationship." David's stomach tightens. "What happened?" "Thompson Sr. called me in for an explanation." Emily's expression remains composed, though David has learned to read the subtle signs of tension around her eyes. "It was actually quite illuminating." "How so?" "He asked me directly if my personal feelings for you had influenced my professional judgment regarding the project." Emily settles into the chair across from David's desk. "I told him the truth, that I recognized your talents before any personal connection developed, that the project's merits stand independently of our relationship, and that I would make exactly the same decisions again, based purely on business considerations." "And he accepted that?" David asks, knowing the corporate world rarely accommodates such straightforward explanations. A small smile touches Emily's lips. He said, and I quote, "Emily, we hired you for your judgment. If we start dictating who you can associate with outside office hours, we'd be undermining the very qualities we value in your leadership." Relief washes through David. "So the complaint was dismissed?" "More than dismissed," Emily says, leaning forward slightly. "Thompson suggested that Parker might benefit from a temporary reassignment, an extended project in our Singapore office. Apparently, the board has been concerned about his focus on internal politics rather than business development for some time. The implication is clear. Parker's campaign against them has backfired spectacularly, revealing more about his own motivations than exposing any impropriety on their part." "That's unexpected," David acknowledges, processing the sudden shift in their professional landscape. "There's more," Emily continues. "Thompson also suggested that our workflow optimization project be expanded company-wide, with increased resources and a permanent team structure. He wants a presentation on scaling options next month." "That's incredible," David says, genuinely excited by the professional opportunity, despite the personal implications still hanging between them. The potential impact across all divisions could be transformative. Emily nods, her expression warming as she watches his enthusiasm. "I knew you'd see the possibilities immediately. That's one of the things She pauses, seemingly searching for the right word, "appreciate about you." The careful word choice highlights the continued ambiguity in their relationship. Closer than colleagues, more complex than friends, yet still undefined in many ways. "There's one more thing," Emily says after a moment. "Something I wanted to ask you." "What is it?" "Jacob's birthday is next weekend. He wants to have a small celebration at the lake house my family owns about an hour from here. Nothing elaborate, just swimming, boating, a barbecue." Emily's tone remains casual, though David detects an unusual hesitancy. "He specifically asked if you and Lily would come, not just for the party, but for the whole weekend. There's plenty of room. The house has 4 bedrooms." The invitation represents another threshold crossed, not just a few hours together, but a full weekend away, sharing a house, experiencing the kind of extended proximity that inevitably reveals new layers of personality and relationship. "We'd love to," David responds without hesitation. "Lily will be thrilled." "Good," Emily says, visibly relieved. "Jacob will be ecstatic." A comfortable silence falls between them, filled with the unspoken recognition that their relationship continues to evolve in ways neither had anticipated. The professional crisis that Parker tried to engineer has instead cleared away obstacles, creating space for new possibilities. "I should let you finish your report," Emily says finally, standing to leave. "Don't stay too late, though. The children have that rocket competition tomorrow morning. I'm almost done, David assures her. Just wrapping up the final sections. At the door, Emily pauses, turning back with an expression that suggests a decision made. David? Yes? I'm glad the storm brought you into our lives. The simple statement, delivered with uncharacteristic directness, carries more emotional weight than any previous acknowledgement of their connection. So am I, David responds, holding her gaze. Every day. The moment stretches between them, laden with possibilities, before Emily nods once and slips out, leaving David to contemplate how far they've come from that rainy night when a CEO and her son sought shelter from a storm. Now, the lake house is everything Emily had described. A gracious retreat nestled among pines with a private dock extending into clear blue water. The children's excitement is contagious as they explore. Jacob proudly showing Lily all his favorite spots with the proprietary air of a longtime visitor. The weekend unfolds with the relaxed rhythm of vacation, swimming in the morning, hiking nearby trails, cooking meals together in the spacious kitchen. Away from the corporate environment, Emily seems to shed layers of her professional persona, laughing more easily, moving with less measured precision, expressing thoughts and preferences more freely. On Saturday night after Jacob's birthday celebration, complete with cake, presents, and a spectacular sunset viewed from the dock, the children finally succumb to exhaustion, falling asleep amid half-constructed Lego sets in Jacob's room. David and Emily find themselves alone on the deck overlooking the lake, sharing a bottle of wine as stars emerge in the darkening sky. The conversation flows easily, touching on childhood memories, future aspirations, and philosophical questions, all the territories they've begun to explore in their evolving relationship. I never imagined this, Emily admits, gesturing vaguely to encompass the scene, the peaceful lake, the sleeping children, the comfortable intimacy between them. When I took the CEO position, I thought I was choosing career over this kind of life, that the two were fundamentally incompatible. And now, David asked gently. Emily considers the question, sipping her wine thoughtfully. Now I think I was creating a false dichotomy, segregating parts of myself that actually work better in integration. Like the workflow system, David observes with a smile, optimizing for overall life satisfaction rather than compartmentalized efficiency. Exactly, Emily agrees, returning his smile, though I never expected to become a test case for my own management philosophy. A comfortable silence falls between them, filled with the night sounds of the lake, water lapping against the dock, distant frogs, the rustle of wind through pine needles. I've been thinking about that first night, Emily says finally, when we showed up on your doorstep, soaking wet and desperate. Best unexpected visitors I ever had, David responds lightly, though they both recognize the significance of that chance encounter. You could have turned us away, Emily continues. After how I treated you in that meeting, no one would have blamed you. That wasn't even a consideration, David says honestly. I know. That's what makes you, you. Emily turns to face him more directly, moonlight silvering her profile. That night changed everything for me, David. Seeing you with Jacob, with Lily. It made me question assumptions I'd held for years about what success looks like, about what matters. The admission carries the weight of vulnerability rarely displayed by someone as carefully controlled as Emily Carter. David recognizes the gift of this openness, this willingness to acknowledge transformation. Sometimes the things that look broken just need someone patient enough to fix them, he says softly, echoing the mantra he'd repeated to himself the night of the storm. Emily's eyes meet his, understanding the reference immediately. Were we broken, David, or just incomplete? The question hangs between them, philosophical yet deeply personal. David considers it seriously before responding. Maybe neither, he suggests. Maybe we were just on separate paths that needed to converge. Like a workflow optimization, Emily says with a small smile. Exactly, David agrees, returning her smile. Finding the most effective pattern for all components of the system. Emily's laugh is soft in the darkness. Only we would use business metaphors for this conversation. Occupational hazard, David acknowledges lightly, though I think there's some truth to it. We've spent months integrating our professional and personal lives in ways that enhance both, rather than diminishing either. The board certainly thinks so, Emily observes. Thompson actually commented yesterday that I seem more effective, not less, since finding better balance. Balance, David repeats thoughtfully. That's really what it comes down to, isn't it? Not choosing between career and personal fulfillment, but finding the point where they support each other. Yes, Emily agrees softly, though I never expected finding that balance would involve a storm, a broken-down car, and a mid-level engineer with remarkable bedtime story skills. Life rarely delivers its most important gifts in expected packages, David responds, his tone light but the sentiment genuine. Emily is quiet for a moment, her gaze returning to the starlit lake. When she speaks again, her voice carries a quality of decision made, of clarity reached. I don't want to compartmentalize anymore, David, she says simply. Not with you, not with the children, not with any part of my life. The statement hangs in the air between them. Not quite a declaration, not quite a question, but an opening towards something new and undefined. David reaches across the space between them, his hand finding hers in a gesture as significant as it is simple. Neither do I. Their fingers intertwine as naturally as their lives have begun to merge, gradually, cautiously, but with growing certainty. No dramatic declarations, no grand gestures, just the quiet acknowledgement of a connection that has been building since that stormy night when an unlikely visitor knocked on a door. From the house comes the sound of a child's voice, Jacob calling out in his sleep. Emily listens for a moment, then relaxes as silence returns, her hand remaining in David's. We should probably turn in, she says softly. The children will be up at dawn, ready for that boat ride we promised. Probably, David agrees, though neither makes any immediate move to leave the peaceful tableau they've created. Instead, they sit together in comfortable silence, watching starlight shimmer on the lake's surface, their joined hands a bridge between separate lives now moving steadily towards shared territory. The storm that once forced them together has long since passed, but its effects remain, in changed perspectives, in children's friendships, in professional partnerships, and in the gradual, careful exploration of possibilities neither had anticipated on that rain-soaked night. Some storms, it seems, bring gifts worth keeping long after the rain has stopped.